Good morning. Genesis chapter 19. Totally not going to get sidetracked today. Verse 30. Then Lot went up out of Zoar and dwelt in the mountains, and his two daughters were with him, for he was afraid to dwell in Zoar, and he and his two daughters dwelt in a cave. He was afraid to dwell in Zoar. Well, that's odd. Didn't he just beg those angels to live there? Oh, people. Thank God we're not that way. Where, we're praying for one thing, and then we get it, and then we're like, no, God, I want to pray for something else. Being so very fickle. Why was he afraid to dwell in Zoar? Well, a couple options. Maybe it's because the destruction of the other four cities of the plain were pinned on him. I mean, maybe people, hey, Lot, seems awful fishy that you leave and all these places get destroyed. Maybe he was afraid that God would destroy Zoar too, because he knew that that was originally on the agenda. So there are a few possibilities about why he was afraid to live there. Regardless, he moved on to bigger and better things. A cave in the mountains. The same mountains he said he couldn't live in because he was, anyway, people, right? Now, verse 31, the firstborn said to the younger, our father is old, and there is no man on earth to come into us, as is the custom of all the earth. Come, let us make our father drink wine, and we will lie with him, that we may preserve the lineage of our father. So they made their father drink wine that night. And the firstborn went and lay with her father, and he did not know when she lay down or when she arose. It happened the next day that the firstborn said to the younger, indeed, I lay with my father last night. Let us make him drink wine tonight also, and you go in and lie with him, that we may preserve the lineage of our father. Then they made their father drink wine that night also. And the younger arose and lay with him, and he did not know where she lay down or when she arose. Thus both the daughters of Lot were with child by their father. The firstborn bore a son and called his name Moab. That's familiar. And his father is the father of the Moabites to this day. And the younger, she also bore a son and called his name Ben-Ami. And he is the father of the people of Ammon to this day. Now, what's funny is Moab is, we have Abi and Abba and all these Ab names. Moab means from the father. Convenient name to name your son in this situation. And Ben-Ami means son, Ben-Ami, of my people. So they gave their kids appropriate names. Now, I find it mildly ironic. They fled. They fled to the mountains. Quickly, take only what you must. So they made a run for it. Mom dies. They get to Zoar, but I don't think we're going to say it. So they go to the mountains. But they were able to bring enough wine with them to get their dad plastered on multiple nights. It's just kind of a funny thing, but it's just showing, again, the kind of people that they were, the kind of family that Lot was raising. Now, these girls in verse 32, they say they must lie with their father, that we may preserve the lineage of our father. It doesn't seem like these young ladies have any concept of just trusting in the Lord, believing that God can and will provide. We got to take things into our own hands. And quite often that's the way all of us are. And that's really one of the big messages of this last section of Genesis 19 is too often we'll take measures into our own hands when we don't see how God is going to work. But you see, when you don't see how God is going to work, that's what we call faith. Faith is believing in things that are unseen. I mean, it's the idea is that, and hope, right? We're told in the New Testament that hope that is seen is not hope, because if you see it, you don't have to hope for it. It's already there. And so the idea is that we're supposed to go by faith, believing in things we can't see, trusting in God for things. So I have some birds tap dancing on my roof, and it's extremely distracting for me. I'm sure you don't hear it, but anyway. And so that's faith. The idea is of us trusting in God for these things. And these girls didn't have that faith. And it's probably because, once again, Dad did not model it for them. Dad did not raise them up in it. Dad did not train up his children in the way they should go. Yet Lot was righteous. It's a great reminder, twofold, how we can be a Christian, but we can be utterly horrible at being a Christian. And that's not a good thing. It's not something we should, strive for. Yet again, we can be utterly horrible Christians, but we're still a Christian. And that's just a good reminder of the grace of God, that it's not by being good Christians. It's not by being holy. It's not by obeying. It's not by training up our children that we're saved. We're saved by Jesus and Jesus alone. It's by grace we've been saved. It's not of works. So that's the idea there, is that, even though Lot obviously could have done better in his performance, well, he was still righteous in God's eyes simply because of faith. One last closing thought, okay? Lot flees from this place to that place, right? He goes from here to there. He's fleeing from his city. Oh, let me go to Zoar. Zoar doesn't look that good. Let's go to the mountains. And all this time, the one place that Lot didn't go was back to Abraham, back to fellowship with his brother or his uncle. Quite often, Christians, due to whatever reason, shame, that's probably the biggest one, that Lot was ashamed of where he had chosen to live, what he was going through and experience in his life. He was ashamed, and so he opted not to go back to Abraham because he was just ashamed and he couldn't bear to see his uncle. And too many Christians find themselves outside of the church because they're ashamed. They went down a bad path. They did some bad things, or even just the foolish shame of they haven't been to church in a long time, and it would just be awkward because when we show up, everyone's going to ask, where have you been? And I'll be like, oh, just backsliding and all. But we see again that Lot ends up in even worse trouble. I mean, all the stuff from this chapter that we got into, the stuff with his daughters, could have been avoided if maybe he had fled to fellowship with other believers rather than fleeing to live in a cave. And too many Christians die living in caves. They had a bad experience at a church. They had a bad experience this, or they themselves just slipped up. And so they opt, well, I guess I'll just live my days out in a cave. Righteous, I mean, you're still righteous, Lot. If you're saved, then you're saved, right? But is that how you want to go? Alone in a cave? So, let's learn some lessons from Lot. There's a lot we can learn from Lot. Trust God. Have faith. That means doing things and taking steps even when you don't see how it's going to work out. And maybe that step is simply that commitment to fellowship and making sure you're surrounding yourself with other people who are going to keep you from getting into even worse trouble. Lot probably left Sodom thinking it can't get any worse than this. It got worse. So, surround yourself with Christians. Surround yourself with people who are going to lovingly encourage you, exhort you, rebuke you if need be, but it's going to be putting you on the path That's going to be storing up those riches in heaven, making your Father proud so that you might stand before him one day and hear those words, "Well done, good and faithful servant." That's all we got for today, folks. Have an amazing day.